First match of the day here in Hearthstone Grandmasters Asia Pacific. Got a shift out of Masters Tour. I've been in the hosting role over there for a week. And it's nice to be back here in Grandmasters. It was a good weekend. We got to see some good display from a bit of APAC representation, getting to see who may be joining us next season. But TIZS is, of course, one of our newcomers that we have for this season after performing pretty well in the first half of the year in terms of Masters Tours. And although we haven't seen all too much of him, as you said, haven't really scratched the surface, I think we can say when we have seen TIZS, we've been fairly impressed for the most part. A couple of things I think we disagreed on, but we can call that teething problems as he settles into Grandmasters here.
Yes, indeed. And looking at the lineups for both of the players, one class that they are both rocking is the Soul Demon Hunter, left up after the bans. I feel like this is not a deck that you ever want to ban no matter what the strategy is, but it seems like it stocks up because it's pretty consistent all across the board, and I'm not surprised to see more players bringing it after the Montreal meta.
Yeah, it did perform fairly well overall. The single archetype I don't think was quite at the top, but the class as a total was pretty high up in terms of the win rates of all the different classes. This is, I think, a pretty steep learning curve for me over the course of Masters Tour Montreal, was to not compare too closely Demon Hunter and Bomb Warrior, because beforehand I was obviously saying, they're both classes that have control aspects, but generally you want to equip the weapon and kill your opponent with damage fairly quickly, be it Marrow Slicer or Wrench Caliber. But now we're seeing some players like Flurry, including Demon Hunter, but not Bomb Warrior, which is a very sharp diversion from what we've seen in previous weeks. What do you think is leading players to include the Demon Hunter but omit Bomb Warrior from their lineup?
I feel like Bomb Warrior is being a little bit more heavily targeted nowadays. We can also see it from the ban strategy that now rogues are kind of being prioritized for bans, even druids to a certain extent. Whereas in previous weeks, maybe before the nerfs hit, you would be seeing priest and warrior bans. And now people are a bit more comfortable, I suppose, including weapon removal in their decks to also possibly hit weapon rogue. And to look at Chonsu's lineup in particular, that's a hard target strategy that maybe they were trying to avoid.
Always something to bear in mind. This is what Monsanto is saying on Twitter, that he believes Bomb Warrior is one of the first truly targetable decks in quite a long while, with Hearthstone getting a lot more kind of mid-rangey over the last few months rather than these weird control/combo decks. But Bomb Warrior, obviously, with a full fatigue/weapon removal lineup, very, very counterable. So instead, this time we're going with a bit more of the standard stuff here from these players. Rogue starting things off with the Secret Rogue, I think, still being a very prime deck in the current metagame for TIZS.
And this first matchup is pretty symmetrical to look at because Flurry banned away the Druid from TIZS and TIZS banned away the Rogue from Flurry. So they're playing each of what they have remaining on those two classes. The opener for Flurry, though, is extremely minion heavy. And as is the eternal problem for Druid, if they don't get ramp online early enough, it can get pretty scary. The good thing for Flurry, though, is that TIZS has not hit Questing Adventure.
Oh, I was just about to say that I really like this decision from TIZS to hold back on the Cult Neophyte on this turn, because you really want to go for the Cult Neophyte effect going into 4 mana or 7 mana, but Flurry top decks the perfect Overgrowth to innovate out, which is the last thing that TIZS wanted to see here. It's gone from very good to pretty bad.
And while it looks a little bit weird to ramp towards 6 mana, Flurry's deck is probably not the standard of Guardian Animals Druids that we're seeing. He has the double Emerald Explorers and Breath of Dreams to kind of make his ramp a little bit more consistent without having to run Wild Growth. What he's cut from the list is 1 Teacher's Pet, but he still has the double Survival of the Fittest and King Faoris in there, so I would call this quite a greedy build if you would.
This Emerald Explorer here is obviously fairly vulnerable to a Blackjack Stunner, but I think with the low amount of power on board, I do like Flurry just getting down the big minion here, not worrying too much about the reactivity from TIZS' side of the board. And he is absolutely rewarded for his efforts with a Ysera Unleashed ready to come down in the next couple of turns. The only thing that's stopping him from just running away with the game is, as I said, that well-timed Cult Neophyte from TIZS to lock out the Guardian Animals.
It does, but Flurry can kind of put together a little Guardian Animals of his own with the Lake Thresher and Broom. The nice positioning from TIZS on the Miscreant, though, means that his Cult Neophyte would be protected, and also potentially the Secret could be a bit worrisome for Flurry because there is a 1 of ambush in here for TIZS. So if you were to throw out Broomstick plus Lake Thresher, there was no actual way to get rid of the poison.
Yes, he knows at this point that it wasn't. Oh no, with that secret, he knew what it was, right? Because the secret was played a couple turns ago, and he played the Emerald Explorer last turn. Yeah, I mean, I was going to start talking about Ambush at that point, which would have been even wronger. So we'll both take the L on that one. But yeah, it was, I think, a fairly clean play. The only alternative being Lake Thresher, but that does look like it could be positioned a little bit better for when some of the bigger threats start coming down.
Yeah, I do like the teacher's pet play here. For TIZS, though, I was definitely thinking about going for a passage this turn to try and look for an Edwin at the end of everything with the double traps, but this is still a pretty powerful swing onto the board.
TIZS here going for...
Oh, it's still going to be passage.
Everything all at once, trying to have his cake and eat it as well. If he can find Edwin here, we're looking at a pretty much game-winning situation. But with the recent nerf to only drawing 4 cards, not especially likely to be found.
Yep. And that's why I, at first glance, didn't think it would end up being a secret passage turn, given the mana that he had spent before going for it. Because I tended to think that you go passage and maybe try to hit either Questing or Edwin.
Right.
It's really difficult to optimize, but I do laud TIZS for making the decision really quickly because these turns get complicated, and as you can see, it still came down to the rope before he got all the action.
Yeah, I think I like this line from TIZS because it also had the first half of the turn. It wasn't like he was just spending mana for the sake of it. Playing Neophyte and stepping it is specifically, again, to make sure that even on 8 mana, Guardian Animals is unplayable on this turn. And he's just trying to buy himself that time, Had the upside of potentially hitting Edwin. Didn't work out. And so because of that, even with Guardian Animals unplayable, like we were saying, the budget animals can still come through here and sweep up everything on the board.
Pretty huge. I think Flurry will end up playing the Broomstick because he's not likely to get value out of it in the near future. The nearest is probably turn 10 with Ysera, and rushing out a 4/12 doesn't seem that great. I think what he's thinking about is whether he wants to hero power plus Broom into the Miscreant to allow the teacher's pet to push face, or if he wants to save the Broom on board.
I mean, I think there was some merit to thinking about saving the Broom, because you need to think at this point, how am I losing the game? And the answer is still, I think, most likely a huge Edwin, if they're able to chain together something like that. In which case, you do potentially want to rush out your dragons after Ysera comes down. But even on balance, I do still like just getting down the Broomstick.
Or he does run 2 copies as well. As for TIZS, though, it's no small deal that he's picked up the Broomstick Thresher of his own. And that's another reason for actually Flurry to think about, is it okay if I give both Broomstick and the Thresher if I position it well, or is it better to just give a Thresher in case of Plagiarize?
Well, it is good positioning, that's for sure.
Well, if you're TIZS, the fact that he leaves up a Thresher even if he goes for Thresher Broomstick is extremely annoying. I feel like he wants to save that combo for after he's dealt with the teacher's pet one way or another.
Yeah, going with a fairly low tempo play here, to which Flurry says, brilliant, that sounds like the perfect turn to get down the ultimate win condition in Ysera Unleashed. The bane of everyone facing a druid, and now the game pretty much becomes, unless the rogue can win very quickly, they will simply die to the onslaught of the dragons eventually.
It's a great time for Flurry to trade off the Broom now, because after you put the teacher's pet down to 1 HP, the Broom then becomes a liability because the Lake Thresher could have rushed into it and then caught some other minions in the crossfire. I mean, everything is awkward if he develops a minion and leaves the other Thresher up, so I feel like it's time to just cash in Thresher Broom and trade in both to deal with the Lake Thresher.
Right. I'm not seeing much other way that we can spend enough mana even as TIZS here. Like, he obviously needs to start thinking, about his actual win condition. How does he not just survive, but turn this into a win? Like saving the secret is something to consider to try and pop off with Hanar should that roll around.
Actually, Rush Lackey's just better than the Broom here, isn't it? I've never done this before, but it's pretty clean.
Yeah, that is pretty clean.
Okay, Ferroris for 2/7 drops. I think you take that.
Don't you just want to take the overflow here? Like, you can trade heal back up, probably draw a bunch of dragons at the same time. Keep your Ysera nice and healthy.
True. Both seem very powerful.
They do. I mean, even Guardian Animals, again, would probably just win the game on the spot here for Flurry.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That's the goods. And for Flurry, okay, I was gonna say if he doesn't play Lightning Bloom, I like the idea of that because then he unlocks survival just for lethal next turn.
Right.
But now he has the other Lightning Bloom, so you can still play it and get an additional minion this turn.
I mean, I was saying you just play the Guardian Animals on this turn. That's where my head was at, but I think your logic is probably slightly more sound there in giving yourself the chance for lethal.
TIZS does have this generated Blizzard to survive one turn, but it seems like that is going to be far from enough.
Yeah, Blackjack Stunner does seem a more permanent, or at least the minions are gone for the moment if he goes for this play. The Blizzard obviously just delays the inevitable for another turn. He's still praying for that miracle. He is not running Dragon's Horde in the deck, so he can't discover a legendary. It's going to have to be secret passage into some absolute nonsense, I think, here.
Well, when we talk about miracles, it's box generation generally, but turns out this is still enough damage that Flurry has with the 4 minions on board. Gonna close it out nice and easy, and this matchup does get very, very explosive if the Rogue can't put down their own questing early enough.
Yes, definitely an unfortunate way for that to go for TIZS. I think he did everything he could in the early game. I did think his line of going for the big turn, obviously with the swing of double Cult Neophyte with the Shadow Step, trying to find the Edwin, that was definitely his best chance of getting the victory. He smelt that the game was slipping out of his fingers and tried to just go for that one final ditch effort. Didn't work out, and so the Druid takes the win. Probably a lot of reason why Flurry is banning it away in his own right. He doesn't want to have to deal with that from TIZS' side.
It's true. And while I did say that the list from Flurry looks relatively greedy with the King Faoris in there, that card was highly debatable because it seemed like it got popular during MT Montreal, but I think that the card win rate is not actually that high. The core of the deck still remains very strong with the Overgrowth, and perhaps the inclusion of Emerald Explorer for something to do before Guardian Animals is actually a plus side. I'm interested to see if this type of build will get more popular in the coming weeks because other druids in APAC are still bringing the exotic Mount Seller build.
They are indeed. Plenty of room, I think, to still explore with the Druid. But I do think Flurry's version with a little bit of extra dragon synergy is a pretty smart way to go. We won't get to see it again today, obviously, with it having taken a win now. But we'll have to see if he can take the win with the Mage and the Demon Hunter as one of the most highest rising archetypes in terms of popularity. We're going to see if he can take the wins to become the victor over TIZS after this short break. We'll be right back. Flurry is playing TIZS in our first match of the day. So if you're joining us now, perfectly timed. The day has just begun with plenty of APAC, Europe, and America's Hearthstone yet to come. So no matter what region you prefer, I'm sure you'll be able to see all your favorite players competing. But for now, with TIZS having taken a loss to the Druid there in somewhat unfortunate fashion, it's going to be an uphill climb for him to take the win now. Going with the Warrior up against the Demon Hunter now, which is, again, as I was saying at the start of the video, an interesting trend we're seeing with Demon Hunter being on the rise and Warrior stocks falling rapidly here. Do you think that in the head-to-head that is reflected? Does the Demon Hunter feel like in a good spot against the Warrior? Or is it still the Bomb Warrior that's king?
At first glance, I would tend to favor the Bomb Warrior. For Demon Hunter, though, they can put out the damage a little bit more consistently, and the mid-game curve gets very scary. Also worth noting that Flurry's build has the Magtheridon still included, which a couple people have been cutting lately. So I think that this version will be a little bit more difficult for Bomb Warrior to get through.
We shall have to see. Also, this is the most recent trend in Masters Tour, or in Hearthstone metagame, I should say, which was definitely shown drastically in Masters Tour Montreal, which is cutting the Pirate package. We're seeing no Anchor, no Risky Skipper, no Armor Smiths, none of that stuff that you usually saw in Bomb Warrior. And I will say that as we entered the top 8, it was mostly Pirate Bomb Warriors that were in the top 8. They were definitely the better performing version of Bomb Warrior, whereas TIZS here is going without the Pirate package, which definitely harms the amount of armor that he will be able to gain in terms of immediate burst with Risky Skipper Armor Smith, which could hurt his chances, I think.
That is very true. He does have the double Evil Quartermasters in there to somewhat shore up the armor gain and give him some early plays, because the other downside, I suppose, of running the Pirate package is that a lot of the times you hold them in hand and they become dead cards until around 6-7 mana. Flurry's curve is starting to come together, though. He has the Lapidary for next turn. Tons of soul shards already charged up in the deck.
It's an interesting curve, isn't it? Because you have to think quite strongly here about Magtheridon. Warrior is one of the decks that can't transform the 1/3s, it can't step them back to hand, there's no kind of shenanigans that it can make. Eventually Magtheridon should be summoned, but Flurry just needs to think, how likely is that to happen soon? Is that even necessarily good for him to give his opponent the 1/3s here? Or should he just carry on with, like you said, coin Lapidary and ignore the skull for them?
Yeah, it's a really good question because, as you mentioned, coining out Lapidary means the skull is offline for another turn and you kind of get a dead turn in the middle. I would be much more partial to to Magtheridon if he had like the Blade Dance to follow it up, or Shattershard Mystic on the following turn. If he does just want to save the coin for skull, there's also just equip Eldrazi as a play this turn, but with Soul Shard and Glavebound, there's an opportunity to curve out, but just use Glavebound as a 6/4 body.
Whoa, you want to consider using the body. I mean, that's fair. There is definitely enough damage to win without having to use the 6/4 Battle Cry as well. And it does curve very, very cleanly into Skull on the following turn.
Really tough decision. Obviously, you get more overall damage by just saving the Glavebound and trying to stick to the curve here, but I think there's potentially so much upside for immediately getting a 6/4.
I actually kind of agree with you here. And
or
so does Flurry.
5/5 into 6/4.
Yeah. I mean, he can adapt, obviously, on the following turn. But right here, this is going into a Brawl turn. If TIZS wants to Brawl this, perfect. Then you follow up with the Glavebound, and it's very likely to be sticking, if or at least demanding some hard answer from you.
Do try to keep yourselves alive.
And it does indeed pull out one of the better answers from TIZS here. The 3/1 plus Death Rattle, very inconveniently for Flurry, does mess up just Glavebound on curve as a play.
Yeah, it really couldn't have gone much worse for Flurry in this particular instance. Much worse than any of the other clears, with Barrel's Death Rattle of deal 1 damage to all minions, clearing off the Glavebound. Probably going to have to be adapting here for Flurry, but that's not terrible. It could just be like Hero Power down the Barrel and then equip Warblades, right? It's a decent use of your mana.
Or, of course, if something better comes off the top here. For TIZS, it was a small decision whether he wanted to play the Faceless Lackey as well, because obviously Flurry can just hero power down the Barov and you immediately lose the Lackey. But because TIZS's mana is spoken for the next couple turns, whether he wants to go Kronks or Wrench Caliber Cutting class in the near future, I like that he just gets the Lackey on board for like probably a 3-1 or 2-2 body on average, remaining after the Barov death.
Yeah, I think it's the threats have been paced out fairly well for the most part by our competitors here, with obviously TIZS playing the Kronks going into turn 6. That's a rigid turn for Demon Hunter. They want to play Skull of Gul'dan here, and it forces Flurry to deviate. He's not terribly sad about it because he gets the Glaive Bound down, but it's a good turn for TIZS to disrupt.
Right. Well, if he wants to save the most health on his face, that is an immediate armor game to activate the shield slam, but it really hurts to not get Wrench Caliber online, because at some point TIZS needs to go for his own win con as well.
I like this. He can do both, right? He has to sacrifice the 2-2 minion, but very, very worth it to get this damage through to face.
That's true.
Alas, poor warlock.
Things proceeding at a very APAC pace, which I always like to see.
Also pretty lucky there for Flurry, it's got to be said. There were plenty of Soul Shards in the deck, with both the Jailers being played and a Soul Share, and didn't hit any of them off of the Skull of Gul'dan. So very, very happy to get the full discount, plenty of mana spent, and damage swinging thick and fast to the face now.
Yeah, the big deal for me here is that he hit a minion as well that was playable with the Skull discount, which was relatively likely because he had drawn both the Glaive Bounce and a Lapidary. It is a bit of a downside that he doesn't develop immediately a big Glaive Bound, but I think Flurry was thinking towards trying to put together a way to activate Magtheridon or hit his Marrow Slicers to just keep the damage coming through.
And it's kind of worth thinking about here that Magtheridon obviously is answerable in a couple of ways. Ideally Shield Slam, but one of the premium single target removal spells in Warrior at the moment is Blade Storm. So Flurry, if he's going to activate the Magtheridon, I think he's to try and find some kind of way of either just saying if you have it, and ignoring the Magtheridon, or ideally getting a smaller minion on board as well to distract from the damage of Blade Storm, so that potentially it can even connect on this turn.
Pretty tough to set up, especially since TIZS has his own weapon to get through. Our jaw extremely lacking for Flurry now.
Our enemies will fall.
And you can see here by deliberately floating 2 mana and not equipping the Eldraki, that he's trying to squeeze out every point of damage he can possibly get. I think this is a great window for TIZS now to abuse the fact that Flurry has not hit much good minion development and start putting back the pressure the other way.
The dance really does begin now. It's about trying to get the damage to your opponent's face each turn, be it with Wrench Caliber and Galakrond hero power, or obviously the myriad ways that Demon Hunter has, but also about trying to heal at the same time. You just want to offset your opponent's damage while squeezing your own in, and it's very difficult to find that balance.
Big draw for Flurry here off of the Mana Feeder Panthera. Exactly enough mana to activate the Outcast Skull as well. Fortunate not to get the last discount here, but between all the bombs and soul fragments in the deck, at some point you're not going to get full value out of the skull.
This has definitely been an above average outcome for Flurry with how much garbage is in his deck right now.
Deliberately choosing to hold on to the Consume Magic instead of not overdrawing the next turn, but there are quite a few cards he doesn't mind overdrawing, like the soul fragments.
Yeah, and obviously importantly, the bombs, which you never want to be drawing here. It's a decent way to try and save a little bit of health before he goes for the Eldraki and then heals up for a huge amount of damage on this turn, because if he doesn't have the heal, he's just straight up dead on this turn.
Yup. But with just 2 Twin Slices and hero power, the Eldraki doesn't heal for all that much.
What are you looking at? 7 on this turn? That's enough to survive the turn, very likely. He's not going to be able to put you to 5, which is the big difference here.
It's true. The help of our handy-dandy new tracker, which is moving at a slightly delayed pace. I'm trying to figure out
Right.
just how many things are available. 4 soul fragments and 1 bomb, says the tracker. It hurts for Flurry to not be able to develop Militia here, but he is really just trying to survive at this point. Have the Eldraki equipped for the next turn of healing as well, and then try to put down Militia. Admittedly, I'm not liking his chances though.
Yeah, it's not looking great, is it? He's just taking that little bit too much damage right now. TIZS obviously sweeping away these minions. Weapon goes face every turn. Pretty classic stuff. Bomb Warrior.
What can I ask for?
And the Horde Villager with the buff from Galakron is a threat in and of itself.
Alright, Soul Fragment. Pretty good. You take the loss on Sociologist Militia just to stay out of range of dying on the following turn, because now all of a sudden not dying to that 6 damage swing.
Could still very well end up being a Militia turn. Trade into the Horde Pillager and just probably push the button to heal up for that little tiny bit more.
Oh, it's so tough because you could take the risk that Sociologist has to stick and go Hero Power, Blade Dance, Sociologist, and say if you have any kind of removal, I'm losing the game anyway.
Demons.
True.
Because I'm not really seeing what these Blade Dances do right now. He's got plenty of removal in his hand.
Grows short.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Just use 1 Blade Dance plus 1 Rusher instead of 2 Rushers.
Sure, yeah, that works too.
Or go about it this way, also works. And he's actually holding on to the charge of the Eldraki for potential Twin Slice top deck.
Yep, Twin Slice, Lapidary, all the ways to juice up that damage. And it's a risky line, but again, he is very unlikely to die on this turn. Unless, obviously, the bomb comes through for the extra damage.
Yeah. It's risky because it does put Flurry within 1 bomb cutoff of dying this turn, whereas had he healed a little bit, I think it was... Oh wait, it would still be 1 bomb, right? If you account for the hero power from Galakron. He is just dead.
Yep. Not going to be making it this time. The Bomb Warrior showing that it is still king in that particular matchup. TIZS equalizing the series there with a pretty cool game. You know, I think a good demonstration of the average pan out of that matchup. Neither player drawing absolutely dead, getting a pretty decent hand on both sides for that matter. And the Warrior showing, even without the armor package of Armor Smith, it still just has the ability to play the aggressor that little bit more consistently in the matchup.
And I think from Flurry's game plan, you could see that he was trying to squeeze in minion damage where he could, you know, very readily coining out the Soul Shard Lapidary and being willing to play down possibly Glavebound off curve, or just try to make sure that he gets on board as soon as possible for that mid-range advantage. But if you're not able to get over that hump as Soul Demon Hunter, I think it's very difficult to pull it back in the late game, because by the time you're playing Militia, oftentimes the Warrior has very easy answers to deal with your push on board.
Well, we have now seen the Rogue lose a game, we've seen the Demon Hunter lose a game, and we're now going to see Rogue versus Demon Hunter. TIZS going to be lining up once again that secret Rogue, of which he banned away from his opponent. So he clearly has a high estimation of the deck, even if it didn't work out for him in the first game. And I think the Rogue versus Demon Hunter, for me, is one of the matchups I like most with respect to the Demon Hunter, because it has some super favorable matchups against the likes of Mage, where you can just go face every turn. It feels like you always get there. I think the Secret Rogue has a little bit more capability to fight back against the Demon Hunter, though.
Yeah. Worth noting, though, that Flurry does run the one of Consume Magic. We saw it just shrink the Horde Pillager back to a normal size, but it could be a lot more useful against Rogue, because previously, I think Rogue's best way of winning this matchup is creating one big threat very early on, similar to how Tempo Mage wants to get early mana giants that are out of range of the Blade Dances.
Yep, early tempo, very, very important before the Demon Hunter can unlock all their super powerful board clears with Blade Dance and whatever else that may be. TIZS looking like he may be gearing up for a game similar to what we saw in the first game of the day, where he's got Secret Passage, he's got Prep. We might just be digging for an Edwin here.
Could be. Flurry's got a pretty great curve, though. I was willing to think about Wand Maker just to get it on board as well, but by that point, you kind of get super punished by a backstab / shadow step game plan if there is either questing or Edwin available. So he's just taking a bit slower here.
Yeah, I've been hit with that one too many times. I think I like just clearing off the cat there, because having something decent step alongside questing is very, very big deal.
You fell right into my
Philosophy, the worst one to get.
That's the bad one. I hate that it lights up as yellow when it's outcast as well. Like, it doesn't do anything, alright? Stop telling me it's yellow game. That means good.
Yeah, the 2 additional 1-cost spells for Demon Hunter from this expansion have made the Wand Maker / Cobalt Spellkin effects a little bit less consistent nowadays.
Yeah, quite a lot actually. I think Demon Hunter's been hit by far the hardest with that, because Twin Slice was very, very likely to be found beforehand. Now, not so much.
Oh, Jarek, I keep talking about boxes as the miracle outs. TIZS is not in that bad of a spot here.
Turn
but
7
does he
though.
just take it? Yeah,
Turn
I
7
mean,
box.
that's like Dragon Castering it.
True.
Just taking the Brain Freeze though, because I think, as you mentioned, turn 1, that he was on the game plan of saving up for an early Secret Passage, so having another cheap card to go along with that possibly synergizes better.
And weirdly enough here, the hand has pretty much dried up for Flurry. He does, I think, want to be carrying on fighting for board for the near future. Funnily enough, he gets
Jump
the other bad one.
can give you Skull on Demand, turn 7.
Yep.
But for now, Flurry's worries are just not having threats or even a Shatter Shard Mystic to equalize the board.
Ooh.
Whoa!
Okay. Now we're talking. Coin, Prep, Eviscerate, double 1-drop Edwin? Gotta be the line, right?
Tempo Blackjack looks great here for another +2/+2 on the Edwin. Yes, there's a Consume Magic, and yes, you've seen... Okay,
Oh, 2 1 makers.
you've seen double 1 makers, so maybe we're caster visioning a little bit too hard.
I think
so
you still
scary.
have to go for it, right? Like, when are you going to get a better opportunity than this?
You can go for it, but not all in, for example. You could, like, save prep for Secret Passage, but it looks like he is going all in here, which I still respect. There's
I still
also
think you just take
saving Coin Stunner.
I still think you just go all in. Like, the stunner isn't even that good in the matchup, right? You're stunning back a Soul Shard Lapidary or a, Glaive-bound Adept.
Magtheridon at best.
Right,
But
yeah.
You're right. It needs to fulfill a lot of conditions before the stunner is all that good. But you have to understand the fear. Double 1 maker
course,
plus a natural Consume Magic in the deck.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I do not fault TIZS especially hard for this play. And it's very difficult to extract yourself from what you know. But I don't know, man. 12-12. If you have the chance to just instantly win the game, you always take that, in my opinion.
The 8/8 is still at a very, very tough range for Flurry to remove, though, if there isn't a Consume Magic, because he had not had a weapon equipped prior to this turn.
I grow impatient.
It's going to be tough. He can dig for the 1 Dispel Magic that is in his deck,
Right.
or start chipping away, or ignore it. Those are the options.
Gonna go for the chip for now. And this does set up for a way to remove it next turn with the Chaos Strike, and a significant amount of heal. But it is scary.
TIZS can now obviously just set up for finding Shadow Step off of the Secret Passage. Like, he can just play all the cards in his hand, and then anything he gets off the Secret Passage and pray gets Shadow Step as well, because that will make an unkillable Edwin for sure.
Yes, he does have a strong read on no Consume Magic in hand right now. There's also Passage with Coin and pray you get something good with questing instead. But on average, I don't think the questing gets bigger than 4-4.
This is interesting. This does have the upside of getting Jandas as just a very, very powerful play
True.
to throw down on curve, which you always have to consider as how the mana works out. And there it is.
You got both.
Wow. This doesn't work out quite as cleanly as I think TIZS was anticipating, because he can't play the secret passage first, right?
He can't, yeah. It does heal the Edwin for 5. I'm unsure because I feel like Jandas does put more stats on board on average, but he could be thinking about Blade Dance as the way he loses, which is very valid.
He gets the Dirty Tricks down, which is a pretty big deal to draw some extra cards, but Jandas and then Shadow Step to Jandas there, that was so much power you can throw on the board. Interesting line.
I mean, at first glance, just going all in on the Edwin makes a lot of sense because he has that read on no consume magic.
Yeah, that's true. That is true again.
I think the problem with the Jandas line is like a couple of buffs plus Blade Dance, and your Edwin was at 5 if you didn't Shadow Step the Edwin there. Close, for sure.
It's really close, because then I'm accepting that the Jandas line was a little bit weaker there, but you have another Jandas in hand is the kicker. You can go again with the power play next turn. Very, very close.
Oh. TIZS can really push the initiative here. I think he just plays everything but the cat. And you probably are fine with bouncing a Mana Theater Panthera here.
Yeah, the one thing
and
obviously...
the Spirit Jailer.
Yeah, get them both down. The only thing you're considering here is, of course, Magtheridon as the out here for Flurry. To try and wrestle things back, but at this point, you know, you're not playing around anything here. You just got to go all in with this game plan.
Flurry has been holding on to this double jump for a long time, which at some point gave him a 50-50 of hitting consume magic.
Right. And just got it off the top anyway, but that is a good point. This is not in most lists, guaranteed Skull of Gul'dan off the double jump. That could have been just dig for the consume magic, which probably was quite a lot better on the early turns, right?
I definitely didn't catch that till Sottle asked about it.
As per. I mean, you know, when I'm playing this version, I do not play consume magic in my list, so double jump is always just draw skull, which I was kind of tunnel visioning on.
That was where my head was at as well. And now he has the second Eldraki plus second slice to try and stay alive, but questing is still such a big problem.
So you...
10 showing on board plus dagger if his plays one card at most. 11.
For now.
Just not gonna bother.
Could have healed out of range though on that turn, right?
Could, but just barely. And if you think that this is playing like 2 or 3 cards, I think he's still dead. But you probably still just go for it.
Pretty sure you just play that out there, because he only had one card in hand at that point, and you know, maybe you're able to get a Magtheridon and clear things up thereafter. It was unlikely, obviously, that he'd be able to turn things around, but a slightly weird game, all things considered, for Flurry. With, again, you know, like we were saying, not digging for the consume magic in his list as one of the outcast cards, and also just not going for the chance to win the game there. But on the other side, I think that while Flurry had the weird lines that we need to look at, TIZS had the interesting lines where I'm just genuinely not sure which way he was supposed to go. The Edwin kind of set up lethal, but there was lifesteal with the weapon already equipped on the other side. The Jandas was weaker immediately, but had stronger setup. It's a cool example, I think, of why Secret Rogue is such a cool deck right now. It's so versatile, so different every time you play it. And overall, I think TIZS has a good understanding of the matchup.
I'm glad that you brought that up because at first, when Secret Rogue was being played, it was not even the most popular archetype of Rogue. It was hardly ever getting banned. And as the weeks have gone on and more people have understood how to play it, casters included, the deck has gained a lot more respect and we're seeing bans on it a lot more often. For TIZS now, however, he just has to win with the one remaining deck and is in prime position to take a much-needed win.
Yep, just the Demon Hunter on the other side. Demon Hunter's lost 2 games in a row here, and Flurry, as the one who's lost both those games, is finally going to switch off and take a pretty miserable matchup first. The Mage up against the Demon Hunter. Definitely not the way you want to be going with potentially your last game of the series, because in my experience, this is one of the weaker matchups here for Tempo Mage. Not quite so dismal as I think people were first anticipating, but definitely not a good one.
I would have to agree. It often feels like the Mage needs to come up with a way to generate some more health, whether it be through Ice Barrier or just box shenanigans, because they don't have any natural taunts in the deck. So the Demon Hunter is very free to swing all of these Marrow Slicers to the face. The opener for TIZS has been very awkward, though, to the point where he is playing out a River Croc. I
mean, I've been advocating for Tempo Panthera quite a few times, but I think this is the first time I've actually seen a player go for it. And in this instance, you know, you're expecting development on turn 2 here. You want to be proactively going for it here. I can respect it.
Yeah. Against Tempo Mage in particular, if you just see like one thief on that following turn, then okay, you can go Soul Shear, Hero Power, and that is your turn 3 spoken for. Against something like Druid, I would find it a bit more weird because he didn't have a turn 3 play until he top decked things.
Arcane Breath on the other side, though, is a huge deal. Most importantly, 2 chances here for Flurry to discover Evocation with Magic Trick and the Arcane Breath. He can go again.
I'm thinking I want Mana Power into Mana Cycle right now.
Ooh.
Arcane Breath has to be the pick, right? It's the Discover.
I wonder.
Yeah, I mean, Devolving Missiles clears more of the damage off because... what?
Oh, random versus Discover? Huh?
What?
I don't get it! I don't get it!
How is that better? It's strictly worse, right?
Yeah! He has 2 dragons in hand.
What?
I don't know. I don't know.
And then Coin Ancient Mysteries with no...
I'm
What
lost.
is this turn?
He's doing this to cheapen the giant, but the
Right.
Discover, I mean, the random instead of Discover just feels strictly wrong. It is strictly wrong, right?
Yes, it has to be. I can't think of a single reason why you would go for it that way. I'm sure, well, actually, I'm not sure. It's possible that I'm just being a big dum-dum here, and Flurry sees something, but I don't think so. I am puzzled by that line.
Well, for TIZZ's response, he has 2 choices of 4 drops to go for this turn. Problem is both of these minions look like they gotta be removed soon. Of course, the Apprentice, and also just getting rid of spell damage negates further threats of Raz in the future.
Right.
Doesn't feel great to sink all of the damage into it, but I think TIZZ has to at least remove the Apprentice.
Yeah, he's going nice and aggressive where he can, which is what you want to do in the matchup. I've been criticized amongst our casting group of always saying you should go face when I'm watching the deck, but never doing it when I'm actually playing the deck. But I think you do want to be playing nice and aggressive in this matchup in particular. And while we are somewhat confused with Flurry's lines, the outcome is still the same here. Giant hits the board, which is a big old deal.
Also a big deal that TIZZ gets to remove it. Obviously, it doesn't feel good, but the threat of Conjurer's Calling is far too large. And also just an 8/8 sticking, I feel like TIZZ is not able to outpace that with the hand he has. Having drawn Sociologist Militia, he can just work towards a bit of a slower game plan and just trying to seize the board come turn 7.
Yeah, I will say I kind of disagree with this turn as well from Flurry. I think that should have just been Mana Giant. That's a 3-mana 8/8 he played instead of a 5-mana 3/5. And that could have been a lot more aggression on the board. Obviously, it can almost certainly cost 1 or 0 on this turn, but I would rather have it last turn and start hitting my opponent.
Especially given that TIZZ had to commit quite a few resources to get rid of it. But now Flurry is on the defensive. Ice Barrier looks pretty premium, but Hard Draw does as well.
You got to start thinking here as Flurry, like, is Ice Barrier good because it complements the aggressive game plan? It allows him to ignore his health total and just start pushing face? Or should he go for the draw here? Because he definitely wants to go on the aggro here. That's the win call.
It's true. The fact that he has pseudo card draw effects, all of the cards on the left, make me like the Ice Barrier a little bit more. As long as he gets the Giant down this turn, then I'm good.
Time runs out on me.
I don't feel like the barrier needs to come down immediately. He could just play more minions with the Giant.
Yep, Astromancer, Ray of Frost, Mana Giant, I'd be perfectly okay with.
I don't even think he has to commit the Ray of Frost.
Either order.
Okay.
Great mana utilization this way, Flurry, good job. You don't want to be floating the one here. And that Soul Fragment Jaw does obviously weaken the Militia quite a lot.
Yep, 3 fragments in the deck. Just enough to take out the Giant here, but it is quite slow.
Yep, that's another Giant that didn't get to connect face, whereas if it was played on the previous turn, that would have been, you know, much more likely to be able to connect going into turn 6 rather than 7, of course. And with another Ice Barrier, this one looks a lot less enticing.
I mean, this potentially lets Flurry just go for a control game plan here if he feels like his hand is running short on
Sure.
removals. I mean, on threats. It's really strange. Flurry's hand just doesn't have anything good. It's just generation that supports when you have Apprentice in hand.
Right. It's a very weak hand at the moment. Like, I mean, it's not the worst hand you can have because very often at this point you've just run out of cards as Tempo Mage. He has threats that he can throw on the board, but he needs stuff to complement it. He needs good one-cost spells here. He needs a Flame Strike off of Steward.
Well, I'm thinking if you're taking one Ice Barrier another Ice Barrier that you would want to play the first one by this point. But technically the Demon Hunter doesn't run any burst damage, so as long as Flurry stays above 1 HP and puts down a barrier, TIZS has to attack to actually close out the game.
Do you really not want to get a 3-5 on the board here? Like, I guess the Ice Barrier is kind of nice to get down, like you said, to start running through both of them here, but you know, anytime you play Ice Barrier, you're very unlikely to die.
I mean, I was talking about Demon Hunter not having spell-based damage, so I was advocating for holding on a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Because obviously the Ice Barrier delays only work if you're on the condition of I get to clear the board at some point alongside that. Okay, Glaive Bound is the non-attack based damage, which can go face as long as hero can target something other than the face.
And I think very, very reasonable for TIZS here to go face. Even if he knew there was a second Ice Barrier in hand, which you definitely don't suspect, it's still probably correct to just go face. You still need to get through all this health no matter how much they have.
And that second Ice Barrier is doing a whole lot of nothing against a board this wide, so I feel like we're in Cobalt Spellkin try to hit more Ray of Frost territory.
Yeah, he needs to consider the Steward of Scrolls very carefully here, because it completes half of his quest. It could discover him Frost Nova, obviously, another Ice Barrier, something else to delay a little bit longer. But he needs to time it correctly, because drawing 3 spells here could just be game-winning.
All of them hit the Glaive.
No!
Oh no! Disaster! Hello?
1 mana, make your opponent's board better.
Oh my goodness. I mean, he has to freeze the 2 on the left now, but he can't even get through the 12-year ward. So sad.
So 4, 8, 9 damage I'm counting coming through on this turn.
And Skull active.
Four, 8, 9, 11 damage on this turn, right?
Yep. So I think he goes Skull.
Do you ever go Chaos Strike first?
That's
try and just
true.
like Lapidary?
Lapidary, Glaive Bound.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Ooh,
Such a beautiful
7. Attack. Lethal. Oh no, 1 off because of the
One
mana
off, one
restrictions.
off.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
but it's all right.
yep.
He'll heal very much out of range of anything Flurry can do. And there's still the board. Oh,
Oh my god. Oh, Gia, please, please no.
I don't know why you're implying that I have any control over the outcome of this prime, but
I'm
I
just
agree.
praying
Please
to
no.
anything. Please let decisions matter.
Okay, nothing good so far. That is another prime. Is there space? There's no space.
There's no hand space!
There's
There's
no
no
space.
hand space! No!
I mean, this is what you asked for, Jarek. Please no. And
Yep,
the hand
this is
space
what I
said
asked
no.
for. And Flurry can at least see the funny side of this situation, as TIZS does end up being our first victor of the day, 3-1 over Flurry. And without wanting to put too fine of a point on it, I definitely think that TIZS was the word victor there, just playing a little bit more solidly overall, with some pretty shaky decisions, especially in that last game for Flurry.
Indeed. I think that very last turn from TIZS is also very interesting. I didn't even think about what you were suggesting of Chaos Strike immediately, but that did present some, I think, discrete and calculatable outs, but definitely not by a person in 90 seconds without additional calculators on hand. It's very cool to see from Demon Hunter in particular do these situations come up.
Yeah, indeed. Cool to see. I think that's one of the things that people like most about Demon Hunter as well, with little generation in the deck. It's one of the kind of feels more akin to the old school face decks where you can just calculate how much damage do I have in the deck, what are my outs to try and close out the game, and it feels like the kind of deck that TIZS is pretty on point with. Takes up another win there in Division B, does TIZS, trying to wrestle his way back up to the top of the league there in order to avoid relegation, whereas Flurry looking that little bit scarier in terms of his overall chances. But now, in our second match of the day, Gia, we're taking a slightly different turn here, moving back up over to Division A here with Glory and Bank Yugi. And this time, Gia, Bank Yugi has finally caved. I messaged him about it, asking what on earth is going on. He's not